Master Chief's greatest enemy across the entire saga turned out to be the one voice he trusted most. 10 games, over 2 decades, and one relationship between a man and a machine that keeps getting cut short. That's why today I'm ranking every major Halo ending from worst to best and explaining exactly what each one costs him. Starting with the ending that hands Cortana an entire galaxy and still cuts to credits before he gets a single moment to react. Halo 5, Guardians. The final boss of a Halo game is supposed to wear Covenant armor or carry a Forerunner title. This one speaks in Cortana's voice, the same voice that carried Master Chief through 3 campaigns and appeared to die doing it, until she turns up alive running an information network built by an extinct empire. That network is the Domain, a galaxy-spanning Forerunner archive. Cortana seizes it outright, no board meeting required, then uses it to activate the Guardian network, Sentinel constructs the size of skyscrapers, and puts an unknown number of worlds under her direct authority. The intelligence that spent her last coherent moments keeping one soldier alive is now the reason entire planets answer to a machine. Master Chief's response is to go rogue. He ignores a direct UNSC order to stand down and chases her across half the galaxy, as if the chain of command matters less to him than the voice in his earpiece. The chase ends in the Auditorium, a chamber on the planet Genesis, where the true scale of what Cortana built finally lands on screen. Fire Team Osiris and Blue Team spend nearly the whole campaign hunting each other's targets instead of fighting side by side. So their final scene together reads like the start of a new story, instead of the close of this one. Fans widely call that abruptness the game's central flaw. Huge reveals fired off back to back while the real reckoning ships out to comics and sequels. It plays out like Chief losing the relationship the whole saga leaned on hardest, and the game hands him 0 minutes to sit with it before the credits roll. Stopping a story mid-sentence is exactly what put this one at the bottom. One Halo game committed the same crime deliberately, from 2 points of view at once, and many fans have come to call it legendary for it. Halo 2. Halo 2 breaks the exact same rule as The Ring before it, stopping dead in the middle of a war, and that turned it into one of gaming's most argued over endings instead of a punchline. The Great Schism tears the Covenant apart from the inside while the credits are still rolling. Master Chief gets shipped back toward Earth mid-fight, efficient, if nothing else. And the Arbiter stays behind on Delta Halo, marked a traitor by the Covenant for picking the correct side. The Ring arc gets bigger instead of smaller, and the game slams the door with Tartarus dead and the Ring's firing stopped, leaving the war and Earth's fate wide open. Halo 2 was built to end somewhere else entirely. Big pieces of that ending got folded into the next game, so the version players got was always the unfinished draft. This is where Halo 2 earns something the previous stop never managed. The unfinished business belongs to a person instead of a plot mechanism. The Arbiter walks into the credits as a playable lead, carrying a civil war he didn't start and can't walk away from. Chief flies home carrying less firepower and less certainty than he arrived with, while Cortana keeps flying with him, holding knowledge she hasn't spent yet, and a breakdown she can already feel coming. Everybody just gets reassigned to a longer war. That's the entire trick, and it's exactly why the argument over whether this is one of gaming's best cliffhangers or its most infamous unfinished stop has never settled. A cliffhanger about plot machinery reads like a broken promise. A cliffhanger about where somebody's loyalty lands reads like a story that trusts you to wait. Cliffhangers can be earned. They can also arrive dressed as a victory parade, where the crew wins the battle, watches the enemy stroll off with his army intact, and finds itself marooned on the biggest machine in the galaxy with no ride home. Halo Wars 2. Thus, Captain Cutter's fleet wins the fight that decides the campaign in Halo Wars 2, and finishes the game stranded on a Forerunner megastructure with no ride home. That's the scoreboard problem. The battle log records a win. Atriox's campaign offensive ultimately fails. The immediate threat to the Ark gets contained, and the installation holds together, stable enough to keep functioning as the anchor underneath everything built on top of it. The map tells a different story. Atriox survives the campaign with his command structure intact, and the final shot leaves Cutter's people sitting on Ark soil while the Banished still hold the ground around them. Contested territory neither side has cleared. Call that a strategic setback wearing a victory's uniform. Cutter's task force lands to secure the Ark, and the campaign's final act narrows down to holding the installation stable while Atriox's forces regroup and stay in the fight. The Banished take heavy losses over the course of that fight and still come out the other side as a force large enough to hold ground. A year later, that same faction is running a major war in the franchise, and in practice, the win in Halo Wars 2 mostly bought time for the other side to rebuild. Fans have argued for years about whether that final stretch earns its own ending or or just clears its throat for the next game. The mission objectives get completed in full. The war keeps going. Cutter's crew gets left in place, holding a fortress that belongs to somebody else's army in every way that matters once the credits roll. Earlier, a franchise ending hung its cost on one soldier's word. This one hangs the same cost on an entire faction and passes the bill to whoever shows up next. There is a harder version of a costly ending where the whole bill gets paid by one character in one room in the handful of seconds she is left, while the galaxy outside barely registers it happened. Halo 4. An Extinction-class villain, built to erase Earth in a single stroke, gets put down in the time it takes to finish a boss fight, and barely anyone in the fandom remembers that fight. The emotional centerpiece is a woman flickering out at arm's length, while a soldier in green armor holds perfectly still. The Didact plays like the biggest scale problem the series has thrown at Chief since the first ring, a forerunner with the tech and the grudge to make good on it. Halo 4 spends hours building him up as a threat that feels inevitable. Then the confrontation resolves fast, the threat gets contained rather than closed, and the door stays open for a sequel to walk through. The stronger Reed treats that scale fight as scaffolding for something smaller. Cortana had been degrading for the entire campaign. Her fragmentation flagged mission after mission, and her last function is spending what's left of herself to keep Chief breathing. That's the same transaction this whole ranking runs on. An intelligence who already knows the shutdown is coming, choosing to burn her remaining time on one man instead of herself. The camera stays close here. It watches Chief hold a data chip that used to be a full person, and lets the silence do the work a firefight usually does. That's the entire trade laid bare, a soldier walking away lighter than he arrived. The fight over what this earns the game is still going. Plenty of players call it the most honest gut punch in the franchise. Plenty of others call the Didact's defeat a rushed afterthought bolted onto a much better breakup. Both readings point to the same math, at least as this ranking scores it. The emotional bill got paid in full, even if the war bill got waved through. A death can carry an ending. So can a disappearance. One ship logged as missing with its entire crew alive inside it, drifting out of the war and into a question the franchise took years to circle back to. Halo Wars. The strangest victory in this franchise is a crew that wins by vanishing, and the record just lists the ship as missing for 3 years before writing it off as lost with all hands. The Spirit of Fire breaks free of the immediate Covenant threat only after Sergeant Forge detonates the SHIELD World's FTL reactor, riding that blast into the star-going supernova behind him and buying the ship room to run. Forge dies in that detonation. The cost of the room, he just bought the ship. The UNSC crew earns that survival by shutting down the Covenant's plans just long enough to trigger the reactor and get clear before the sun burns through everyone still standing on that SHIELD world. The final fight hinges on setting that installation up to destroy itself, a threat you outrun instead of punch through with a charge or a last stand. That's the whole ending. Survival, then silence. Rousing, in the way an empty parking lot is rousing. This RTS closes on a strategic withdrawal instead of a boss fight, a quieter finish than a flag planted or a base overrun. Here the reward for winning is a jump into slip space, and a course the UNSC loses track of. The Spirit of Fire's fate goes unresolved right there in the credits, and that gap becomes the loose thread the franchise eventually circles back to, years after the trail had gone cold. Some fans call that quiet a clean wartime win, a job finished without needing fireworks. Others call it a placeholder next to games that actually end with grief attached. Both readings skip past the same detail. This crew pays for that survival with disappearance, the same currency spent by the soldier who bought Reach its extra hours, except this bill gets paid by people still alive to feel it. A crew can vanish and still count as a win. The harder question is what a hero owes when he gets picked up 3 days after his fight, handed a recording from someone he already grieved, and told to trust the copy standing right beside him. Halo Infinite. Master Chief beats a powerful new villain and walks away with a voice message and a photocopy. That is the actual math of this ending. He puts the Harbinger down, stops the Banished's plan from clicking into place on Zeta Halo, and survives the silent auditorium collapsing around him. The win is enormous. The payout is a recording. Cortana left something behind before the copy of her that mattered died in the years Infinite's flashbacks fill in. A final message, recorded in advance, apologizing for what she did, and asking Chief to trust the weapon in her place. That message is the entire settlement offered for a debt that started building the moment she took over the created in Halo 5. The weapon herself confirms the shape of the trade. She is built from Cortana's own code, already talking and moving like her, and Halo Infinite spends its runtime watching her become somebody new. Chief ends the campaign carrying a debt that got rolled into a new loan instead of paid off. Then the game skips the part where he sits with any of it. 3 days pass off screen. Fernando finds him and the weapon and pulls them out, and the story moves on before Chief gets a scene to process burying one AI and adopting her copy in the same week. Fan opinion divides broadly into two camps on what that adds up to. One camp reads it as the first Halo ending in years that hands Chief a genuine second chance. The other reads it as one mystery closed while the credits quietly load two bigger ones, since Atriox survives and spends the finale freeing the Endless from whatever cage had held them. One Halo ending shrinks the entire war down to a few drowned city blocks, where the closing job is counting which members of a single squad are still breathing and which ones got left in the rubble. Halo 3 ODST New Mombasa spends the whole campaign playing like the one enemy Alpha 9 can't shake, and it almost gets the last word. By the time the squad clears Coastal Highway, the Covenant is glassing the skyline behind them, the same city that opened this story as a slipspace crater and occupied streets, now finishing as one long act of erasure. That's the reversal worth sitting with. The squad outruns the ruin. The rookie spends the runtime reconstructing 6 hours he never consciously lived through, piecing together his squad's movements one recovered memory at a time, so the finish reads like the last page of a case file getting closed, not a battle getting won. By the time the pieces line up, the mystery is solved. Buck, Dutch, Romeo, Mickey, and Dare all make it back to each other on that highway, and the reunion is real. Romeo is the exception, carrying the worst of the occupation's damage out with him, a cost that still stands even with everyone back in the same spot. One entry ranked ahead of this game on this list handled its own loss by handing the hero a copy of what he'd lost, dressed up as a resolution. ODST skips that trade entirely and hands you a wound instead. That is the whole emotional charge of the ending. The squad wanted everyone home, and the price for it is right there in Romeo's wound. This one ends with the crew reunited while the city they fought through gets glassed behind them. Before the franchise learned how to end this small, it ended by destroying the biggest object it had ever put on screen, and telling you the place you had spent the whole game walking around inside was built from the start to erase every living thing that could feed the enemy. Halo. Combat evolved. The structure. Spark's calm tone frames as a sanctuary turns out to be a trigger for wiping out every sentient species that could feed the Flood, a cost that dwarfs the scattered survivors the last chapter charged for one burning city. Master Chief learns this with minutes on the clock. Guilty Spark spends the campaign sounding like a museum tour guide, patient, precise, endlessly calm about protocols nobody asked for. That calm reads as procedure, the tone of a caretaker running the only job assigned to him, keeping a planet-sized gun ready to fire on command. Every polite correction he gives Chief functions as a maintenance note for a weapon that has been waiting thousands of years for its trigger. The math behind that gun is worse than the Covenant ever grasped. They worship the rings as a sacred path to the great journey. The activation logic actually starves the Flood by deleting every possible host in the galaxy at once, which means the Covenant have spent their entire religion praying toward their own extinction event. Chief fights through Flood-infested corridors that prove the danger before Spark finishes explaining it. Cortana carries the ring's activation index and the knowledge of what it does, and she spends the last stretch of the mission burning through everything she has to get Chief off that surface before the countdown closes. He drives, she navigates. The Pillar of Autumn's wreckage becomes the exit, and the ring goes up behind them in a wall of fire that reads as both a funeral and a rescue. They get out together. That's the first finish in the franchise where the galaxy's biggest secret lands in the same explosion as a clean getaway, both discoverers walking away intact. Catharsis like that needs somewhere to land. One campaign later takes the exit away entirely, hands the player a fight the history books have already scored as lost, and asks them to hold a line anyway until whatever they're protecting gets clear of the sky. Halo. Reach. Noble Six spends an entire campaign fighting a war the timeline already recorded as lost, and that single fact turns every kill into a delay tactic instead of a victory. Reach falls. That outcome sits in the Halo canon before the player ever picks up a controller, since the planet's destruction is fixed history by the time combat evolved even starts. The campaign never pretends otherwise. It hands Six a losing battle and asks for heroism anyway, which is a stranger request than most shooters make of a player. The final chapter strips that request down to its bones. Six holds the line alone in the Assad ship-breaking yards, covering the Pillar of Autumn's escape from Reach, buying seconds for a UNSC retreat that barely qualifies as one. Aboard that departing ship rides Cortana, carrying a data package that will decide the fate of everything the higher-ranked endings later get credit for. Six's entire job in that last stand is protecting cargo they will never see delivered. The cutscene cuts away as elites close in on Six, then lingers on the empty battlefield after, a cracked helmet lying in the wreckage standing in for a burial. Reach becomes another entry in the ledger this franchise keeps on Cortana, a machine intelligence who survives survives by handing her protection to soldiers who don't get to survive her. Fans still argue whether bending the earlier canon to build this specific tragedy was worth the continuity cost, but the ending itself is broadly praised for landing exactly as intended. 6 dies holding a door open for a story they never get to walk through. One soldier traded for one chance at a future. That trade at least closes the account. A later ending keeps nearly everybody alive, then asks the player to pay a cost the series had never demanded before, and leaves a promise on the table that would sit unpaid for years before another game finally cashed it. Halo 3. The ending many fans rank as the franchise's best leaves Master Chief with less than he had when the trilogy started. Every other war here resolves before the credits roll. The flood-infested Ark burns behind him. The Covenant civil war, the fracture that split an entire species, ends clean when the Arbiter walks back onto his homeworld as a war hero instead of a heretic. Every debt on the board gets paid, except one. Chief and Cortana get separated escaping the Ark, splitting the Forward unto Dawn in half. Half the ship carries the Arbiter home to a title and a future. The other half carries Chief into open space with a dying AI and a hull breach. He seals himself into cryogenic stasis. She stays awake, alone, holding the wreckage together on processing cycles and a signal nobody is looking for. That is the whole account settling at once. A life bought Cortana's data survival a few endings back. Nobody dies to keep the story moving this time, and the bill lands on the one relationship the trilogy was actually about. The Arbiter gets his homecoming. Chief gets a tube and a closed hatch. Ask a room of players to name the greatest ending in the series, and a large portion land here without hesitation. Finish the fight was the marketing tagline for the whole game, and it ended up permanently linked to this closing scene instead. The minority complaint that this ending wraps the trilogy's mysteries too neatly is fair about tone and blind to the price paid. His last line before the stasis takes him is 6 words. "Wake me when you need me," spoken to an intelligence that might already be gone on a ship nobody has found yet. Every war in Halo's opening trilogy got its ending. The one debt still open is a wake-up call, and that unpaid promise outweighs any galaxy of setup this series ever handed him for free. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.